Rounding when you're dealing with decimals is very much like rounding when you're dealing with whole numbers. You're first going to identify where your place value is, and then you're going to look to the right. If it's 5 or greater, you're going to be rounding up. If it's 4 or lower, you're going to be rounding down. And depending on which circumstance you're in, you might not always be rounding to the nearest number. So in this example, we're going to be looking at rounding to the nearest something or other. But sometimes you would want to ensure that you're rounding up. Like, for instance, if you're buying material for a job and it says you need, 2.3 packs, you would want to always round this one up, because, if you only get 2 packs, which is rounding to the nearest, you would obviously not have enough. There are definitely occasions where you'd want to round up, or you might want to round down for similar sort of reasons. But we're looking at rounding to the nearest right now, so rounding to the nearest number. All right, so if we want to round this number 35782, so 35,782 and 462 thousandths, to the nearest thousand, well, I'll first identify where the thousands place is. Let's see, ones, tens, hundreds, thousands. That's right here. Now, there is no TH on here. This was not thousandths place. This was thousands with a D, without the TH. So that's why my thousands place is at the 5. I'm going to be kind of cutting it off there, but I need to figure out if I'm going to be rounding up or down. So I look at the 7, and the 7 is bigger than 5, or it's 5 or bigger, I should say. So we're going to be rounding up, which means this 5 becomes a 6. We're going to increase it by 1, and then everything that follows here is going to become zeros. You could technically, I suppose, write with 3 zeros after the decimal place, but that's equal to 36,000 without any zeros after it. And what we'll see once we get into talking about measurements and such, doing additional decimal places like that is actually a little bit, this implies something else, that this is kind of implying more accuracy than you're actually using. You rounded to the nearest thousand, so you would want to just say 36,000. If you rounded to the nearest hundredth, let's go 35782.462. We again want to identify where the hundredths place is. The hundredths place is where the 6 is, right there. And I'm going to look to the right at this 2. This says that I'm going to be rounding down, which means I'll just keep everything over here exactly as it was. And then anything that follows there will be zeros. And again, I could have written a 0 after this. It is actually equal to the number I'm looking for, 782.46. But having those trailing zeros on there again implies that you're being more accurate than you actually are here. If you're rounding to the nearest hundredth, you'll just leave it there. Something else that is commonly done is saying rounding to a certain number of decimal places. And when we're talking about rounding to a certain number of decimal places, we're counting off the number of decimal places after the decimal. This is, I don't know, whatever. This is just how it's done. So if we want to round this to 2 decimal places, we're going to look at the second decimal place and the second place value after the decimal, which is where this 3 is. And I'm going to be looking at the 8. Is the 8 5 or bigger? Yes, it is, which means I'll round this up. I'll get 74.24. If I wanted to round this to 2 decimal places, 8.043, rounding it to 2 decimal places, 1, 2. Oops, I don't know why I did over here. This is the first decimal place. This is the second decimal place, so that's where I'm going to round it, right there. Looks like this is going to round down to 8.04. If I wanted to round this to 1 decimal, we would get 8.043. Rounding it to 1 decimal place means looking at the 0 and cutting off here. Well, this is 4 or less, which means we're going to round down. We're just going to keep everything to the left the same. This would be the one case where you would actually want to leave that trailing 0 on there. And we'll talk about this more later on. But what's really going on here is when you say 8.0, this is implying that you have accuracy to the 10th place here. And if we're rounding to the one decimal place, we are rounding to the tenths place. So this is why it would be appropriate to leave an 8.0 here, whereas it would not be appropriate to have it wouldn't be appropriate to have 8.00, for instance, because this would kind of be implying that we're rounding to the hundredths place, even though we just rounded to the tenths place. The numbers are equal, but it implies more accuracy to say 8.00. Similar reasoning, I wouldn't want to just call this 8, because that would be implying that we rounded to the nearest 1, even though we rounded to the nearest tenth. Right now, again, you're not going to be counted off if you answer it one way or the other, but that is going to be coming up in the next couple chapters, so it's something to be on the watch for.